Nobody really knew when it started, but everybody in the compound eventually noticed it. The landlord, Uncle Brightman, treated every female tenant like precious eggs. Yet, he treated his own wife like an unpaid help that came with the house. It was confusing at first, then funny, then worrying, then annoying, all at the same time. Many years ago, when he first built the house, the landlord, Uncle Brightman, was not always loud. He was known as a responsible man. People called him chairman with respect, not sarcasm. He greeted elders properly, smiled modestly, and walked with his wife, Auntie Rosalind Babyface, like a man who was proud of who he married. Back then, Auntie Rosalind laughed more and wore bright clothes. She spoke freely and corrected tenants confidently. When she greeted you, you would feel it in your chest. Good morning, she would say. You are welcome. Uncle Brightman used to nod proudly beside her. That is my wife, he would say. But slowly, things changed. The change did not come with shouting, nah. It came with advice and suggestions. It came with sentences that sounded like care at first. You don't need to stress yourself too much, he told her one evening. I will handle outside matters, just stay indoors. At first, it sounded kind until more female tenants started moving in and the compound got filled up with people, noise, cooking smells, laughter and life. Then Uncle Brightman discovered something new. Attention. He loved the way people laughed at his jokes, the way young women greeted him with respect, and the way his voice carried authority when he spoke in public. He enjoyed it too much. As such, he began to perform. Every morning, he would step out dressed sharply with his chest forward and strong perfume. His voice followed him wherever he went. Good morning, my people. Good morning, my angels. The female tenants would laugh politely. Good morning, sir, they replied. Then he would turn to his wife and ask casually, Rosalind, have you cleaned the back? Why are you still standing there? The change was small at first. People noticed it but ignored it. Auntie Rosalind also adjusted herself. She reduced her laughter, reduced her voice, and told herself that marriage required patience. Over time, Uncle Brightman became sweeter outside and harsher inside. The sweetness became performance, and the harshness became a habit. To the tenants, he was a charming, romantic man. He had a pet name for all his female tenants. Baby Blessing, don't let the sun touch you too much, oh. Angel Zainab, you are looking really beautiful today. But to his wife, he was controlled. Why are you laughing like that? You talk too much. Stand very well. Auntie Rosalind began to apologize for things that were not mistakes. She began to say sorry and I didn't know too often. Years passed like that. Tenants came and went. New ones arrived and they noticed the pattern faster because it had grown louder. Auntie Pepper noticed first. One morning, she greeted Uncle Brightman cheerfully. Good morning, chairman. He smiled widely and said, Sissy Pepper, how is business? You are glowing, oh. Then Auntie Rosalind greeted him quietly from behind. Good morning. And immediately his face changed. Why is my foot still cold? He asked. Auntie Pepper paused. Now, she later whispered to Sissy Zainab, is it the same man? Sissy Zainab laughed nervously. Maybe he has a public voice and private voice. However, over time, the jokes stopped being funny. Uncle Brightman flirted freely in the open. He would joke loudly, if I married one of my tenants, my life would have been sweeter. People laughed at first. Then one day, Auntie Pepper asked him casually, so why didn't you? And the laughter died awkwardly. Auntie Rosalind stood near the tap pretending not to hear. Her shoulders had learned how to fold inward. Her eyes avoided gathering attention and she worked non-stop collecting rents, settling quarrels, cleaning common areas and apologizing for things she did not cause. One afternoon, Blessing Baby Angel asked her, Auntie Rose, do you even rest? Auntie Rosalind smiled and replied, rest is for later. Auntie Pepeye shook her head and said, later sometimes never comes. After many years of watching without speaking, the compound finally began to notice that what was happening was not just a coincidence. It was a pattern that repeated itself every single day like morning devotion. Uncle Brightman had perfected his public voice. It was warm, friendly, slightly flirtatious, and very loud. Anytime he stepped out, his presence filled the compound like background music. Good morning, my angels, he would shout. Have you eaten? Baby, take care of yourself, oh. The female tenant smiled awkwardly and replied politely, but the greetings were no longer sweet to the ears of those who listened carefully. One morning, Sisi Zainab was adjusting her wig by the staircase when Uncle Brightman passed. Angel Zainab, he said proudly, you are looking fresh today. She smiled friendly and said, thank you, sir. Behind him, Auntie Rosalind came out with a bucket of water and said, good morning. But Uncle Brightman did not turn. Why are you still standing there? He asked. Didn't I tell you to wash the tank? Sisi Zainab froze. She looked at Auntie Pepeye, who witnessed everything too. That afternoon, the women gathered accidentally on purpose near the water tap. Auntie Pepeye began. She lowered her voice. Do you people notice that the landlord greets us as if we are his wives? Sisi Zainab nodded, and he scolds his wife like a child. Blessing Baby Angel shifted uncomfortably and said, I thought I was imagining it all. He calls me baby almost every day. Auntie Pepeye clicked her tongue and said, the next time he calls you baby, tell him your father is looking for him. They laughed, but the laughter carried weight. Later that evening, Uncle Brightman shouted from inside the house, Rosalind, where is my food? Auntie Rosalind rushed out and said, I am coming. Auntie Pepeye watched her pass. Does he even appreciate her for all she does? She asked. Never, oh, Sisi Zainab replied. From that day, the women watched more closely. They counted how many times Uncle Brightman praised the tenants compared to how many times he corrected his wife. And the numbers were embarrassing. One morning, Uncle Brightman joked loudly while standing near the gates. If I had known, I would have waited and married one of my tenants. Auntie Pepeye replied, Chairman, you already did. The compound burst into laughter. Uncle Brightman laughed too, but his eyes searched their faces and he saw the disrespects. That evening, Auntie Pepeye sat beside Auntie Rosalind while she sorted rent receipts. She said, you endure too much, Auntie Rose. Auntie Rosalind smiled weakly and said, it is marriage. Auntie Pepeye shook her head slowly. No, marriage is not management. Auntie Rosalind did not answer, but she soon noticed something different. The compound began greeting her differently. They would say, good morning, our beautiful landlady. Good afternoon, sweet Auntie Rose. She found it weird, but it became frequent. By the time the greetings changed, the compound had already crossed a line without holding a meeting. It was not rebellion yet. It was curiosity mixed with courage. The tenants had started testing something small to see what would happen. And what happened surprised everyone. The next morning, Auntie Pepeye stepped into the compound with her big pots balanced carefully on her head. She saw the landlady and greeted cheerfully. Good morning, our precious landlady. Auntie Rosalind froze for a second, then she smiled. Good morning, she replied. Uncle Brightman stepped out immediately with irritation sitting on his face. Why are you greeting her like that? He asked sharply. Auntie Pepeye did not even blink. She just replied, because she's the landlady. Greeting is free. The compound laughed while Uncle Brightman hissed and walked away. From that day, the greetings multiplied. They became deliberate and loud. Good morning, sweet Auntie Rose. Good afternoon, our beautiful, wonderful landlady. At first, Auntie Rosalind thought it was a joke. She kept looking behind her whenever someone greeted her, as if the real landlady would suddenly appear. But slowly, something inside her warmed up. Her shoulders became relaxed and her steps slowed down. She began to sit outside for small moments instead of rushing back into the house like a timid maid. Uncle Brightman noticed everything. One afternoon, he leaned on the rail as Blessing Baby Angel passed. "Baby, you are looking tired today," he said gently. Blessing smiled politely and replied, "Thank you, sir." Then she turned immediately and greeted, "Good afternoon, sweet Auntie Rose." The compound burst into laughter. Uncle Brightman frowned. "What is all this? Have I offended you people?" Sisi Zainab smiled sweetly. "No, sir. We are just greeting everybody equally." That word equally disturbed him. Inside the house that evening, his voice rose. "These tenants are turning you against me. They are teaching you nonsense." Auntie Roslyn was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "They only greet me." Now, that answer angered him more than shouting would have. The next day, Uncle Brightman tried another approach. He stood in the compound, laughing loudly and pretending everything was normal. "You people like drama," he said. "Greeting is now activism." Auntie Kudirat dropped her skipping rope and looked at him. "Respect is not drama," she said. "It is just normal." The women began to sit with Auntie Roslyn openly, sharing small stories with her and asking for her opinion. "Auntie Rose, which electrician do you trust?" Auntie Pepeye asked one afternoon. She thought for a moment and then replied, "The one that repaired the backlights." Uncle Brightman rushed out. "Who told you to decide that?" he asked. Sisi Zainab answered, "We asked the landlady now. Is it wrong?" Silence followed. Uncle Brightman realized what the tenants were trying to do, so he started correcting his wife louder and faster, as if volume would erase her tiny confidence. "Roslyn, stop sitting outside. Go inside now. Why are you laughing like that?" Auntie Pepeye stood up one evening and said, "Chairman, if sitting outside is a crime, then all of us are guilty." The compound laughed loudly. Uncle Brightman felt mocked and he accused the tenants openly. "So you all want to scatter my home, right?" Auntie Kudirat replied, "No, sir. We want to stop pretending that it is not already scattered." That night, Auntie Roslyn could not sleep. She lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the greetings, laughter and words. She had been relegated for years, but now she felt seen. The next morning, Uncle Brightman corrected her in front of everyone again. "Why is breakfast late?" She looked at him and said, "I am still cooking." Her voice did not shake this time around. The whole compound noticed and Auntie Pepeye smiled. That one sentence is progress. From that day, Uncle Brightman stopped enjoying the compound the way he used to. His jokes no longer landed. His greetings were answered politely but briefly, and his pet names were now redirected. They would say, "Sir, greet your wife first. Sir, your wife is behind you." Each sentence pushed him further into discomfort. Meanwhile, Auntie Roslyn was still quiet and gentle, but something had changed in her. She no longer shrank or behaved timidly, and she no longer apologized for standing. Operation Save the Landlady had moved from greetings to presents, and then the table finally scattered one bright morning when Uncle Brightman woke up already irritated, even before anyone annoyed him. Control had been slipping from his hand slowly, and he could feel it. His house no longer moved when he moved. His voice no longer cleared rooms, and his presence no longer commanded silence. Auntie Roslyn was outside early, sweeping gently near the staircase. She was not rushing. Now that alone unsettled him. "Why are you sweeping like that?" he asked sharply. "Is there no work inside to do?" She looked up calmly and replied, "I am sweeping." That answer landed wrongly in his ears. It was not the words, it was the tone with which she said it. It sounded neutral and steady with no apology inside it. Auntie Pepeye passed with her pot and greeted, "Good morning, beautiful landlady." "Good morning," Auntie Roslyn replied. Uncle Brightman snapped. "Must you greet her like that every day?" he asked. "Are you mocking me?" Auntie Pepeye stopped walking and said, Chairman, Greeting is not mockery now. Silence is. The compound went quiet. That was new. Usually, silence obeyed him, but this one questioned him. Later that afternoon, Uncle Brightman decided to regain control publicly again. He stood in the middle of the compound pretending to joke. Are you people aware that marriage is not a group project? Auntie Kudirat dropped her towel from her shoulder and said, abuse is also not a solo sport. Gaps followed. Somebody laughed nervously. Somebody else even clapped once. Uncle Brightman pointed angrily. You people are poisoning my wife. Blessing baby angel stepped forward before fear could catch her. Sir, she said politely, she has been poisoned for years. We are just offering her the antidote. That word finished him. He turned sharply to Auntie Roslyn and ordered, tell them to mind their business. The old Auntie Roslyn would have rushed inside. The old Auntie Roslyn would have even begged for peace. But this one stood still and said, I did not invite them. They came because they care. The compound breathed in sharply. Uncle Brightman laughed bitterly. So now you are forming strong woman. You want to embarrass me? Auntie Pekpaye answered immediately. Sir, embarrassment happens when evil has been going on for too long. The landlord shouted, this is my house. Auntie Kudirat replied, yes, sir, but she is not the furniture. That sentence hung in the air like smoke. Uncle Brightman tried another tactic. He softened his voice and said, Roslyn, come inside, let us talk. But she shook her head and said, we have been talking inside for years. Today, I am listening outside. Nobody laughed. This was no longer comedy. This was now exposure. All the tenants gathered fully now and started firing him. You shout at her. You praise us instead. You silence her. You flirt openly with no respect for her. Each sentence came from a different mouth. Uncle Brightman's voice cracked. You people want to scatter my home? Auntie Pekpaye stepped closer and said, no, we want to stop watching you break it. That was when Auntie Roslyn spoke fully. I am tired. Tired of being corrected like a child. Tired of being invisible in my own house. Her voice shook slightly, but she did not stutter. Uncle Brightman looked around and realized something terrifying. There was no audience left for him anymore. No more admirers and no laughter waiting for his next line. He had lost the crowd. That evening, the compound did not celebrate loudly or dance for joy. They simply sat outside longer than usual, talking freely, laughing and breathing easier. Meanwhile, inside the flats, Uncle Brightman was quiet. His control had lost its echo. Auntie Pekpaye leaned back and sighed. He is finished. Sisi Zainab nodded and said, when control loses weaknesses, it becomes powerless. The morning after that uprising was quiet. Auntie Roslyn woke up early as usual, but for the first time in many years, she did not jump out of bed at the sound of her husband clearing his throat. She just lay still, staring at the ceiling, listening. Surprisingly, no shouting followed, no instructions came. Uncle Brightman woke up later than usual. He did not call her name or complain about breakfast. He did not also step outside to perform for the tenants. When he finally got out of bed, his shoulders were lower and his voice was tiny, like someone who had forgotten the lyrics to a song he used to confidently sing. Auntie Roslyn went outside and sat on one of the plastic chairs near the staircase. She sat properly this time, not on the edge. The sun touched her face gently. Auntie Pekpaye passed and greeted. Good morning, our able landlady. Good morning, Auntie Roslyn replied, smiling fully this time. Uncle Brightman heard it from inside and paused. He stepped out slowly and said softly, Roslyn, please, can we talk? She looked at him for a long moment and replied, yes, but not like before. They talked later that day, but not with shouting or threats. For the first time, Auntie Rosalind spoke privately with her husband without rushing. I lost myself, she said. You treated everyone well except me. You corrected me until I disappeared. Uncle Brightman tried giving excuses at first. I was only joking now. I didn't mean it like that. I was stressed. She listened quietly and then shook her head. Stress does not erase respect. Choice does. That was when he realized that this conversation was not only about apology, it was about consequence. From that day, things changed visibly. Auntie Rosalind stopped collecting rent personally. She handed that duty to an agent. She stopped clearing common areas, stopped apologizing for breeding, and began dressing the way she liked again in bright colors. Her voice also fully returned. The tenant noticed immediately. Auntie Rose is glowing, Sisi Zainab said loudly one afternoon. Auntie Pepeye replied, yes now, because she's now breeding. When a woman remembers who she is, no house can silence her again. Uncle Brightman tried to reclaim his image, but it did not work anymore. When he called tenants baby, they shunned him immediately. Sir, call your wife that. And when he joked now, nobody laughed automatically. Respect now had conditions and boundaries. Auntie Rosalind did not also rush to forgive him. She did not rush to pretend everything was fine. Instead, she set boundaries. I would no longer tolerate public correction. No insult disguised as jokes and no control disguised as care. Uncle Brightman agreed, not because the tenant forced him to, but because he realized he had lost the power to oppress. And slowly, the compound returned to normal, but it was a new normal. Auntie Rosalind now joined the women conversations without fear. And Uncle Brightman was still the landlord, but he was no longer the center of the compound. Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. What lesson did you learn from the story? Give the story a thumbs up and share the story out with your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye!